You've been lied to your entire life about what kindness is. Not by strangers, by the people closest to you, your parents, your teachers, your culture. They sat you down and told you be good, be helpful, be available, always forgive, and you believed them. Because why wouldn't you? It sounded like wisdom. But here's what nobody told you about that lesson. The moment you became reliably kind, the moment people around you learned that you would always show up, always give the benefit of the doubt, always find a way to forgive you, you became useful. And there is a devastating difference between those two words. Respected people are valued. Useful people are managed. Right now, somewhere in your life, someone is counting on your kindness to get something they haven't earned. Someone is calculating exactly how far they can push you before you finally say no. Someone has mapped out your soft spots and visits them regularly because they've learned they can, because you've never shown them otherwise. This video is the thing they never wanted you to find. Before we go further, I need you to understand something important. You are not weak or broken. You are someone who was handed a set of rules that were never designed to protect you. They were designed to make you manageable, easier to access, easier to rely on, easier to take from. Think about the people in your life who have drained you, the ones who always have a crisis, the coworker who takes credit quietly and says nothing when you're overlooked, the friend who only calls when they need something, the person who responds to your boundaries with guilt so refined it feels like love. These people didn't find you by accident. They found you because of your kindness. Because kindness, when it has no strategy behind it, when it's reflexive, unconditional, unguarded, sends a signal into the world. That signal says, I can be accessed. I can be moved. I will not protect myself. The world does not reward open doors. The world walks through them. This is not cynicism. This is 500 years of documented human behavior. And a man named Niccolo Machiavelli spent his entire life writing it down so that people like you wouldn't have to learn it the hard way. Niccolo Machiavelli was a Florentine diplomat and political philosopher, and the most honest man who ever lived about the nature of power. He was not evil. He was not a villain. Machiavelli was a realist, and spent decades inside the courts of Renaissance Italy watching how men rose and fell, who survived, and who was consumed, who was respected, and who was quietly destroyed. And what he wrote made powerful people extremely uncomfortable because it was true. His warning was this: the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Read that carefully. He isn't telling you to be cruel. He's telling you to be complete. Because if you are only one thing, only gentle, only giving, only available, you will be hunted by the people who have learned to recognize exactly that profile. The lion without the fox gets caught in traps. The fox without the lion gets eaten. You need both living inside you at the same time. 1. Your kindness is being treated as a debt you owe them. There is a pattern you've seen 100 times, but probably never named. Someone receives your generosity, your time, your emotional support, your help, and instead of gratitude, they quietly upgrade their expectation. What was once a favor becomes a baseline. What was once a gift becomes something they feel entitled to. This is not coincidence. Consistent generosity without boundaries doesn't build appreciation over time. It builds entitlement. Your kindness stops being seen as something you chose to give and starts being seen as something you're obligated to provide. The Machiavellian correction is simple. Give deliberately, not reflexively. Generosity that has to be earned carries real weight. Generosity that is automatic becomes invisible and expected. Before you give anything, your time, your energy, your emotional labor, ask one question. Am I choosing this? Or am I doing it because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? That one question will tell you everything. 2. They are weaponizing your need to explain yourself. You've done this. Someone misrepresents you, twists your words, accuses you of something unfair, and immediately you go into explanation mode. You break it down, you clarify, you lay out your reasoning, and somehow, 20 minutes later, nothing has changed except that you've exhausted yourself. Here is what Machiavelli understood that most people never do. Every explanation is a concession. Every defense is a map. When you explain yourself to someone who never intended to understand you, you don't resolve the conflict. You hand them intelligence. You reveal what you care about, what narrative threatens you, where you feel most exposed, and they file every piece of that information away for later. Silence is not surrender. Silence is a locked vault. What you don't say cannot be used against you. 3. Your availability is your greatest vulnerability. Human beings are hardwired to value what is scarce and discount what is abundant. This is not a theory. It is biology. The people most accessible in Machiavelli's Florence were the ones most easily manipulated, most easily dismissed, most easily replaced. Think about someone whose attention genuinely feels like it has to be earned. You think about them. You value the moments you connect because those moments feel real. Now think about the person who is always available, always responsive, drops everything every time you call. If you're honest, do you value their presence the same way? You already know the answer. Let your availability reflect your actual priorities. When you are present, be fully present. When something or someone does not deserve your full presence, withdraw it, without guilt and without explanation. 4. Guilt trips work because you have a conscience, and they know it. The guilt trip is elegant in its simplicity. It doesn't require force. It doesn't require a real argument. It just requires making you feel that your boundary, your limit, your refusal somehow makes you the villain. You say no, and suddenly you're selfish. You create distance, and suddenly you're cold. You protect your time, and suddenly you don't care about people. Machiavelli would have recognized this instantly as a psychological trap, and his response would have been direct. A person who can manufacture your guilt on demand owns you. Full stop. The counter is not cruelty. It's clarity. Your limits are not a character flaw. You are not responsible for managing someone else's emotional response to your boundaries. Their discomfort with your no is not evidence that your no is wrong. 5. Kindness without the ability to withdraw it is just weakness with better branding. This is the lesson that changes everything. The problem was never your kindness. The problem is that your kindness has been operating without the one thing that makes it genuinely powerful, the willingness to take it back. When your yes is guaranteed regardless of how you're treated, you haven't demonstrated generosity. You've demonstrated that you have no standards. And people consciously or not lose respect for what has no standards attached to it. This knowledge is for protection, not destruction. Be kind. Be genuinely, deeply kind to the people who have earned it, and be equally willing to become completely unavailable to people who have shown you, through their consistent behavior, that they don't value what you offer. That combination, warmth with standards, generosity with limits, is not coldness. It is the most powerful version of yourself that exists. Here is what this all comes down to. The old you is dead. The version of you that confused being needed with being valued. The version that apologized for having limits. The version that kept giving to people who kept taking and called it loyalty. You are a weapon. Point it at your own future. Every hour you spent managing someone else's emotions was an hour stolen from building something that actually matters. Every ounce of energy poured into relationships that only ever flowed one direction, that was capital that belonged to your life, your vision, your growth. You belong to no one, not to people who need you small so they feel comfortable, not to a version of yourself that was designed by other people's expectations. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to create tyrants. He wrote it so that genuinely good men would stop being destroyed by men who were simply more strategic. The lion and the fox, not two different people, the same man, you. Now you know. The question is what you do with it.